Hi students, and welcome to week 4 in your online general psychology course. First of all, I hope February is off to a good start for you. And even more than that, I hope that you have been able to stay warm and healthy during this cold snap. I'm filming this on the Thursday, the week before we start week 4, and it's still pretty cold outside. So I hope by the time you're watching this, it's warmed up and we've all thawed out. So this week, we will continue on with Chapter 2, Psychology Scientific Method. We started this chapter last week. You had some Connect assignments, practicing things like, your variables, your experiment design, research ethics, etc. And this week, we'll continue on with this chapter. So let's take a look at this week's module. Remember, because we're continuing on with this chapter, if you want to refer to the PowerPoint or the narrated PowerPoint, that will be in the week 3 module. Here in the week 4 module, you have this research design assignment. I'll come back and talk about that here in a little bit. And you have 2 Connect assignments, 1 concept clip on independent and dependent variables, which is part of experimentation. So when you run a study that is experimental, you need to make sure that you have your variables defined, and there's a difference between your independent and dependent. So this exercise will help you on that. You have a concept clip on correlation studies. So the big thing with correlation, it shows some relationship between variables, but it doesn't necessarily imply cause and effect. So to prove cause and effect, you would need to use an experiment, but correlation shows that at least 2 variables are happening relatively close together or have some type of relationship. And you show that with the statistical analysis of a correlation coefficient. And then your chapter 2 post-test. So we didn't have a quiz over this chapter last week. Here it is this week. So this week we'll round out Chapter 2 on Psychology Scientific Method. So I'm going to go back to this research design assignment and talk about that a little bit further. I won't belabor the point of this assignment because you have a whole video that explains this assignment that I've done for you and gives you examples. So don't forget to click on that video before you start the assignment to really help you understand it a little bit more, okay? So much more about this assignment in this video that's only about that assignment. But I did want to address it in this video because I want to make sure to emphasize some points here. So first of all, this is the measurement I'll be using for your student learning outcome number 1, which is where you identify various research methods and their characteristics used in the scientific study of psychology. The other points that I want to make is that this is not a long, big, written assignment. It's not a paper. It's clearly, 4 questions here. So I'm really just asking you to answer these questions. Format, I'm not looking for you to write an APA paper or use APA format in this assignment simply because this is to get you thinking. This could turn into, down the road, a actual, APA formatted paper, an actual study that you would perform. But this is like the first little baby step with it. So please don't be intimidated by this assignment and thinking like, oh my goodness, it's this big, long research paper. That's not it at all. Here, research means what we've been talking about in Chapter 2. How do we perform scientific study? How do we use research in the field of psychology? So this isn't a research paper in terms of you going out and doing a bunch of research. This is actual research. And for this assignment, it's all hypothetical, meaning that you're not actually doing a study. I'm not actually asking you to carry out any research. I'm simply asking you to think like a psychologist and go from there. So I hope that helps kind of define what I'm looking for here. I'm not looking for a big, long paper with this assignment. This is a daily grade, if you will. Counted no more in your grades than the Connect assignments that you're doing for the week, okay? So I'm really okay with you just answering these 4 questions. And so choosing a human behavior, how many times have you looked out and you thought, I wonder why people do that? You know, what is that behavior about? That's kind of where you'll start. So with number 1, I see it being a sentence or 2 long. Tell me what behavior you're choosing to research. Number 2, tell me what your hypothesis is. So your hypothesis is your best educated guess, meaning that you think that you have an idea of why people are displaying that behavior. This is your best attempt, your best guess at it. And so you're telling me what you think the outcome of if you did a scientific research would be. So that's what a hypothesis is. You can read all about hypothesis in chapter 2. A hypothesis is what researchers come up with that they will test out before they formulate their theory. So it's like kind of step 1 of getting to a theoretical framework. Question number 3 is choosing your research design. Sometimes we use surveys, sometimes correlation, experiments. You get the gist here. This is what you've been learning about in chapter 2. So you can go back into chapter 2 material, read about, understand what are naturalistic observations. You get to choose which one makes sense for the behavior that you want to study. Sometimes case studies are the only way you can study it. Sometimes it's only an experiment. So that is where, you know, that kind of is the meat and potatoes, if you will, of this assignment, is you realizing what type of scientific study needs to be performed to measure the behavior that you've identified. And then number 4 is, so all of these, I see them being a sentence or 2 each, okay? Nothing more. You can always provide more, obviously. But as a minimum, these won't, questions 1, 2, and 3 don't have to be more than a sentence. Number 4, I could see it being a short paragraph. So think of that as being like your recipe. If I said, make me some dinner tonight, and I said, here's some meat, here's some potatoes, here's some broccoli, here's some rice, go after it. You know, if you weren't familiar with being in the kitchen especially, you wouldn't know, what am I trying to make here? So think of this number 4 paragraph as being someone in the class that had no idea what you were wanting to study, but you could hand them your number 4 paragraph. And as long as they followed the directions, they would come up with the correct dinner. I hope that makes sense. So making sure that you're defining, right? If I'm looking at a recipe, I need to know, how much rice do I measure out? How do I cook the meat? Do I season it with anything? So in a study, this is the method part of a peer-reviewed article, and this is where you would get, the details of what the researcher used. How many participants? Is it important that they break down the difference between males and females? What about socioeconomic status? Exactly what are they doing in their experiment? Making sure that you're identifying any variables or any outliers that might be present that would affect your study. So think through all of those. Those are going to be different based upon your individual study. I don't expect you to be an expert. I don't expect this to be perfect. Unless you have a surprise out there, I don't know that any of you are professional researchers. This might be the first time that you've even studied psychological research. So this is your best attempt. This is you taking a stab at thinking like a researcher. And where there's blanks, I'll fill them in when I grade this and I go through and comment on it. But don't be worried about it's your best attempt. Don't worry about it being perfect, okay? You're learning. This is a learning curve. This is a learning exercise. So I hope that just gives you a little bit more about this assignment, but please, please, please don't forget to watch this video where I've gone into even more detail and given you some examples about this assignment. Again, hope everybody is safe and warm. I hope by the time you're watching this, we're warming up. Have a great 4th week in class. Wow, after this week, we will already be a quarter of the way through the semester. how did that already happen? And all of your assignments are due. Again, this week you have the written assignment on research design that I just talked about, the 2 concept clips that you will find in Connect, and your Chapter 2 post-test. All of them are due by Sunday, February 12th. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.